Okay, continuing with our look at the SQL SELECT statement. In our last tutorial, we finished off looking at the in reserved word when we are using the select statement in SQL, and we'll continue from there. Just as to connect it with the previous last tutorial, this select statement that we executed, we ran in Access. Basically, it asking us list the details of all the employees whose first name is Mary, Alan, or Ken. So this in reserved word was simply a convenient way of searching using a list. So the complement to that is using the not operator. So the not operator can be used in many different ways. This is one of them. So a not is just a qualifier in front of another operation. So here let's take a variation. So this is the in clause, the in reserve word that we just saw. So we listed all the employees whose first name is Mary, Alan, or Ken. Let's just take the complement of that. So show the details of all employees whose first names are not Mary, Alan, or Ken. It's just a complement of the previous query. So let's highlight this select statement. So you can see that again, the grammar, the syntax of the where clause, you can see it's pretty much the same as the previous one. So we say first name, and then we have a list, Mary, Alan, and Ken. But now we say not in instead of in, and as you might guess, the output will contain all the rows where the first name is not Mary, not Alan, or not Ken. So let's copy this over to Access, paste, and unfortunately I have to again fix the quotation marks. Okay, so let's run this, and there you are. You have all the employees, and you can go to the first name list and you will not find any of those three names that we listed. Here we are. Those three, Mary, Alan, or Ken. You will not find Mary, Alan, or Ken anywhere in this list of first names. Okay, so just to recap, the where clause cuts the table horizontally, and we are saying cut the table horizontally such that the first names are not Mary, Alan, or Ken. And the star after select, by now you should know that it lists all the columns. Okay, so let me go back to Access and delete that select statement so that I can be set for my next query. Moving on. So again, these are shorthands that Access provides us. So suppose here we have a query. So the shorthand that, again, this is a reserved word that I'm introducing to you as part of the select statement, is the between a reserved word. So here's the query. We are saying list the details. So I should type in the word list. List the details of assignments where the hours worked are between 50 and 60. Let me change this to 50 and 60 hours. So let's go back to the table, and here's the assignment table. Okay, so let me just show it to you, and let's get a feel for what we are looking for. So in this table we have the project ID, the employee number, and the hours worked. So what this 50, for example, means is that employee number 6 has worked for 50 hours on project number 1000. All right, so that's what that 50 means. And what we are asking Access to do with this query is we are saying go through that entire list of assignments and list all the rows where the hours worked are between 50 and 60 hours. Okay, and for that we use the reserved word between. So let me close this, go back to query. Okay, so I'm prepared for my SQL statement. I'm going back to the PowerPoint slide, and I'm just going to copy the SQL command. Okay, go back to Access, paste, and I'm going to run this. So do you see now that out of all those rows in the assignment table, Access picked out only those rows where the hours worked is between 50 and 60. By the way, those limits 50 and 60 are inclusive, both those. That's why you see some employees who have worked exactly 50 hours who are in this list. So when you say between 50 and 60, it includes 50 and 60, those boundaries as well. Okay. So coming back to this particular query, so this is just a shorthand. I think, so he says, can we write the query in another way? Between is just a convenient way of expressing a range. I think you can guess that there's another way to write the same query. We could say, for example, I go back to my SQL query and just think about it. Instead of saying hours worked is between 50 and 60, I will say hours worked is greater than or equal to 50 and hours worked is less than or equal to 60. It's the same thing, right? It's just a more tedious way of writing the same thing. Instead of saying hours worked is between 50 and 60, I could just as well have said hours worked is greater than or equal to 50 and hours worked is less than or equal to 60. Let's run this and see if we get the same answer. So you get exactly the same answer. Okay, so between, the reserved word between is simply a shorthand way of expressing a range. All right, and there are several of these handy shorthands that SQL has. You would need to look up the manual for a particular version to see all the variants that are provided, but between is a standard one, a very common shorthand that's provided. Okay, so here's another, again, refinement of the select statement. When you're doing retrievals from a database, one of the issues you will have to deal with is null values, because not always does a database have values for all the fields, and it may be simply that you do not have the information. Let's say an employee has been hired, you don't know what their current title is, you may not know the salary of a particular person. So there are many reasons why there might be null values in a database. So Access, in fact SQL, all SQLs, has this reserved word called null. Okay, and null simply means that the value is missing. Okay, so and you can use the reserved word null in many different ways in a select statement. We're just showing you a couple of ways in which they are used here. So here's the query. It says show the names of employees whose phone numbers are missing. So it could be that the employee has no phone number or office phone number because they're moving around, or they're new, the various reasons why they don't have a phone number. So let's go back to the Access table, the Access database. And I'm just going to open up the employee table just to show you that there are some employees. For instance, there's Rick Brown, whose office phone number is not known, is null. There is Julia, whose office phone number is not known, and Sam. So there are 3 employees whose office phone number is null. All right, so let me get back to setting up the query. So I'm going to get back to the PowerPoint. Here we are. So show the names of employees whose phone numbers are null. So here again, you have select from where. So those 3 clauses are already there. So since I'm dealing with the employee table, so I say from employee here. Okay. And I'm saying that out of that table employee, pick out all the rows where office phone is null. Now notice that we have to use the word is. We can't say office phone equal to null. Again, this is just a characteristic of SQL. It forces you to say is null rather than office phone equal to null. Okay, so office phone is null. And then we are saying after you have pulled out all those rows where the office phone is null, just vertically cut out only the first name and last name. Okay, all right, so let's copy this SQL command select statement over, and we shall run it now. So here we are. Remember, there were 3 employees whose telephone numbers, office phone numbers were missing, and that's where you see these 3 employees, their names listed over here. Okay, so that's how the null operator works. So let me delete this select statement. So I've basically shown you how to use the null. Remember, we used the not operator a few slides back when we said not in. We were searching based on a list and we said pick out the names such that the first name is not in this list. So again, you can use the not reserved word and combine it with null. Okay, so suppose instead of finding the names of employees whose office phone number is missing, I want the names of employees whose office phone numbers are not missing. Okay, so then you look at the where clause. Instead of saying office phone is null, we simply say is not null. So we combine two reserved word, one is not and the other is null, to get the answer that we're looking for. So let's copy this command select statement over. And if I run it, I get all the employees, and you will see those 3 employees. I think Julia was one of them. You don't see Julia anymore on this list. So those 3 employees whose office phone numbers were missing are not on this list. Okay, so it's just the complement of the previous select statement that you saw. So let's go back here. So right now you've seen the null reserved word combined with not. So now let's take a look at again further refinements of the where clause. These are all variations of how you do horizontal cutting. Okay, so by now you probably realize that the where clause specifies the conditions based on which to cut the table horizontally, and there are many different ways in which you can specify the conditions based on which the table should be cut horizontally. Okay, so let's look at what's called an inexact matching by starting with an example that we had, I think, done before. So something similar we had done. Here we are saying, first of all, find all employees whose last name is Jones. Okay, so look at the where clause. We are telling Access, look at the employee table and from it cut out horizontally all the rows where the last name is Jones. Okay, so let's copy this over. Oh, let me delete this select statement first. Here we are, paste. Oh, I have to fix the quotes again. And I run it. So here are all the employees whose last name is Jones. All right. So and it seems that there are 2 of them here. Let's go back to the SQL. So this is an exact match. So we are telling Access, please go through the employee table and find out and pull out the rows where the last name is exactly Jones. Okay, so inexact matching is where we want to do a cutting of the table based on partial matches. Okay, so here is a variation of the previous query. Find all employees whose last name starts with G. So do you see what we're asking Access is go through the list of employees and pull out all the rows where the last name starts with J, meaning after J you could have anything. Okay, so that's called an inexact match, and in order to do that you use the reserved word like. It's as if you're giving an example. Pick out the rows where the last name looks like such and such. So you give an example to Access, and in order to provide these examples you have to use wildcard character. This is what you need to remember. For Access you need to remember the star symbol and the question mark symbol. Okay, so a star will match any number of characters and a question mark matches exactly 1 character. Okay, so let's see what that actually means. So here we are. So we are saying with the previous question that we had posed, find all employees with the last name starting with J. All right, now let's look at the clause, the where clause over here. We are saying where last name like J star. Okay, so we have provided that letter J and then we have followed it with star, meaning we are telling Access, I don't care what follows J. There could be 1 letter, 2 letters, 3 letters, 4 letters, anything, as long as the last name starts with J. Okay, then pull that row out from employee. Okay, so the star symbol in Microsoft Access is your wildcard. It matches any number of characters. So let's copy this over. So here we are. Put space over here. I got to fix the quotes. I'm sorry. One quote, and here's the second quote I fixed. So let me run this now. So do you see here, it pulled out all the rows where we have people whose last name starts with J. In the first case, you had Jacobs, which has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 letters. In Jackson, you had 7 letters. As long as it starts with J, we are good. We pull that row out, okay? So I hope you saw what the like reserved word does and the star symbol does. It's your wildcard match, okay? So we are going to, let me delete this again in preparation for the next query. So let me look at another query. Find all employees whose last name ends in N. Okay, so here if you look at the where clause, look at here, we are saying we put the star in front of N. What we are telling Access is, I don't care what's in front of N, 2 letters, 1 letters, 4 letters, 5 letters, I don't care what's in front of N. As long as the last letter is N, I want to pick that row out, okay? Well, let me copy this command over to Access, paste. Again, I got to fix the quotes, and if I run this now, so here you see we've picked out all the rows where the last name ends in N. I don't care what's in front of the N, but all the last names end with N. So I hope by now you're seeing how the star wildcard works, and also how the like reserved word works in the select statements. All right, so let's end off with a, let's see what's after this. Okay, dates we will do at the end. So let's end up with a little more sophisticated partial match. So find all employees with phone numbers whose first 2 of the last 4 digits is 84. So let me, this might sound confusing, so let me open up the employee table. So what I'm saying is, pull out all the rows where I look at the office phone number and I look at the last 4 digits. Out of those last 4 digits, the first 4 should be 84. So do you see that there are these, this employee is 1, this employee is 1, this employee is 1, and this employee is 1. So there are 4 employees whose phone numbers, the last 4 digits starts with 84. So I just purposely sort of cooking up a more complicated partial match to show you how you would specify it in a Microsoft Access, okay? So select from those parts remain the same. The interesting part is the where clause. So look at the where clause. We are saying go through the employee table and pick out the rows where the office phone looks like the following example. So I'm providing an example of what the phone should look like. And this time, notice that I use the question mark symbol instead of star. Star is a wildcard. It matches any number of letters. A question mark matches exactly 1 letter. So notice the pattern. We're saying question mark, question mark, question mark. So I'm saying that in the phone number, I don't care what the first 3 digits look like. It must be followed by a dash. I don't care what the next 3 numbers of the phone number look like. It must be followed by a dash. I'm only interested in the last 4 digits. And out of those last 4 digits, the first 2 must be 84. That's what the question specifies. The first 2 must be 84, and I don't care what the last 2 are. Okay, so I hope you see what this pattern, we are giving Access the pattern as if it's a filter to use to pull out the rows. Okay, so I'm going to copy this command over to Access. Let me delete this thing. So I paste, oh, let me get the run command back. Okay, here we are. Oh, I need to fix the quotes again. This is a bit of a nuisance, but I have to do it. So here we are. So we say select star from employee where office phone looks like this pattern that we have just given. Hopefully you'll notice, you have observed the difference between using a question mark and a star. I'm going to run this now. So notice those 4 employees have been picked up, and if I go through their phone numbers, you can see for all 4 of them, their last 4 digits start with 84. Okay, so this is what the partial matching looks like in Access using the reserved word like and the symbols star and question mark. So I'll stop this tutorial here and we'll continue with more of the select statement in the next tutorial.